Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to another episode of Filmmaking Production Diary, because we don't have a name for our film yet. We think we're narrowing it down, though. So thank you guys for joining. Daniel Zenny in the house. My name's Miguel Ortega, and this is my co-host, Tran Ma.
Hello, everyone.
She's feeling very sick. So,
yes,
yeah.
I've been feeling very bad. Yeah.
But yeah, we're doing documenting the making of a short film in Unreal Engine 5. This would be our second, or would it be our second or our second and a half project? Second and a half. We did an animatic.
Yeah, I guess it's true. An animatic counts as something, maybe
something.
half a project.
Yeah, so we did another short film. We documented the whole process of Voice in the Hollow. You guys can check that out online if you haven't already. And the project we're doing now is about these little characters made out of cloth and their battle against the evil moths that want to eat them. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's different tonally, we think, than the Voice in the Hollow. Is it different tonally? I guess so. It's not so messed up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's different. It's more adventure-esque or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's more inspired by like our Indiana Jones and Star Wars side than it is by our 1970s horror side. So yeah. So anyway, this character you see on the screen is Caught. He's our main character. He's a mage. He stutters, so he's not a very good mage. And Tran has been working on him a little bit, trying to show some of the stuff you worked on this week. Like you did those cool little buttons.
Yeah, so he's final now. So before he didn't have any sleeves, right? Now the mesh is actually
Show the feet. Zoom in.
He's got little shoes. So underneath that, he's got his regular feet. And then he's got like his cloth pants and his shoes. And before that, he didn't really have much going on as far as the clothing here. And then
go back to the shoes. You're moving way too fast. It's a bunch of cool stuff. So show all the detail.
So there's all this. Yeah, it's actually pretty detailed. It's pretty dense. I retopologize this. It was made in Marvelous. And we do have to be much more dense because we can't do a regular pipeline, which is with displacements. So, a lot of the times people always assume or might ask me questions like, doesn't your Unreal stuff like become lower quality? And I'm like, no, it's actually way heavier. And then they're assuming it's lower quality because there's this idea that you can't do as much in a game engine, but you can actually do like more in a game engine. But it's just very different. Since we can't displace, our geometry has to be really, really dense. So that's why this is all modeled in. And I don't like relying on norm maps so much for some of this detail because it feels like a normal map.
Feels crunchy.
Yeah, norm maps tend to feel crunchy in the like it just has this harsh kind of shadowing. So we just kind of want to avoid that and just kind of model these in. This one these pants here will just be rigged with the body.
I wonder if we need the legs underneath at all. Or is that going to cause more of a nightmare for the riggers?
Probably would, because we'll probably use, like this is his base body here. We'll probably use this base topology for other characters, right? Mm-hmm. So then it would be good for him to have that. And then his sleeves. So also his sleeves will not be simulated. These will just be rigged. And I think they'll look okay because they're a little bit tighter. This was also made in Marvelous. And the topology here is very different than it is on the pants. So if you look at the pants or the shoes here, they're very clean, kind of more grid topology. Try to maintain the squares.
Shapes. I mean, they're kind of grids even as wrinkles.
Yeah. So it kind of worked. But as far as this wrinkling here, when I applied that same type of topology on it, it has to be more dense to support a grid topology. So I just use Marvelous just topology, which actually supports the shape a little bit better. And I think it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it looks good.
Down here, this was like we topologized properly. So that's that mesh. Now the Marvelous mesh is in here. It's not going to be rigged. It's going to actually be simulated on top of the body. So it's all triangulated.
Show the little buttons on his.
So these were custom
Yes.
buttons that I made right here. And they're attached inside of Marvelous. And the way I made these buttons was actually through cloth simulation also. So I built a mesh that looked like this as a regular polygon, and then I simulated cloth on top. And then I went in and I had to decimate it in order to reduce it because it was very dense, right? But we're not going to probably get this close to the button.
If we do, it'll hold up.
Yeah, somewhat. It's kind of missing some detail, but I think it'll be okay. And then I also made these kind of beach ball things. These were also created. They're actually buttons made in Marvelous, exported, and then imported back into Marvelous and being read as actually a button. And then they're just stuck on his head.
So they'll have like little bounce and all that stuff.
Yes. So they'll be simulated along with the cloth. But it's a few extra steps to do that because it's just a little bit different. And then this is all again just kind of that topology. But now it's all pretty much ready. I can show you this file here, which doesn't look as pretty. Give me 1 second.
How's everybody doing today? Is anybody actually listening to us?
Just
we sometimes feel like we're in a total talking to ourselves.
Oh yeah, pretty much. So if you look over here, this file here has all these weird, funny colors because this is my prep into Substance Painter, and each color will read as its own object in Substance Painter. You don't have to give it crazy colors, but it actually makes it easier for me to see how I've broken it up. If you look at the clothing itself, it has a lot of UDIMs. So actually, Substance seems to support that pretty well, right? So we want to be able to hold up the detail very close as we get up to it, especially when it comes to cloth, because cloth
It's holding it. Doesn't it like crap out after like 4 UDIMs?
Yes, but that's why it's broken into
I see.
multiple colors. So each color will actually be read as its own object. Even though when I select it in Maya, it's one object, Substance will actually split it into the different materials. So you don't actually have to break up the model. You just have to import it as an FBX. And you can see the assignments up here. So they're just called close A, B, C, D, and E. So that's quite a bit right here. That's 5. And they'll actually inherit the naming of whatever you assign to the actual shader name. So this way they'll be broken up into 2 or 3 or 4 parts here. So this should definitely hold up inside. Cloth really needs a lot of details. I always tell my students that like you can't have lower texture resolution on cloth because it will just look very muddy, especially if you want to feel like the fibers of it. It needs a lot of sharp detail. And then the body has quite a few UDIMs also, so that it will also hold up because this guy is made out of cloth. He's like a fabric character. So everything I want to make sure doesn't fall apart in terms of the density. We have the eyes. Now, there is like ways you want to prep your work, which I made certain mistakes in because I didn't know how to do this because it was very new in Unreal. Each asset has to start at the first UDIM. So what that means, I know this is like not exciting information, but for anyone doing this, you really need to know this stuff because you actually have all kinds of problems and issues later. So you need to start here for every object that's read as an individual object. For example, I didn't realize that. So normally the way I would have laid something out before in a film pipeline is nothing, if I select the whole character, nothing would overlap. So you would have seen all these UDIMs, you know, like propagated up until here. But if you actually start your one single object like this, and you don't start in the first UDIM, Unreal can have this error where it doesn't know what's going on here, right? And it gets very confused. And then the textures look really messed up because it will just read as one long space. So for example, this became it took me a while to figure out. So it's actually a huge deal. So for example, I had on one of my characters, one of the UDIMs start here because I was laying it out where nothing was overlapping. And then when it read the file, it read it as one really long file like this. It just tried to import all the blank stuff in that didn't have anything. And it also actually destroyed my UVs on the actual mesh. So the mesh actually got messed up. And then the way I found to fix that is everything has to start at the first UDIM. So, I mentioned that before, and I pretty much talk about it all the time because I think it's an important detail.
Daniel Zenny is asking, in animation, I've noticed the tech paths can be strict, edge loops extremely straight, clean, nothing intersecting, verts on meshes on top of others have to have matching verts. Do you work similarly? Not really.
No. We actually have never worked that way. No. We usually go, okay, here's this, here's that. And we have not had to have matching verts.
I think a lot of that pipeline stuff.
I mean, it makes sense. I guess I see what you mean. Like, for example, if you had like this arm, right, and then it had this kind of topology.
The topology of the clothing lines up.
Yeah, and then the clothing has to kind of match that same topology.
We did that at Tippett. They used to be anal about stuff like that.
But Tippett was like that, right?
The thing is, that's a luxury, like to do stuff like that. We just have to muscle through it. I think a lot of that stuff is out of precaution of something bad happening. Whereas for us, we always try to do the fastest way.
Well, not just the fastest way. It's not the fastest way. It's the best looking way. So for us, there's all kinds of things that I have to think about that I go, well, normally, let's say this is not going to be simulated. So therefore it can receive displacement maps. Generally, you don't want to displace anything that's being simulated. Because if you have displacement maps again, in film pipeline, all the clothing is going to pop through each other. After a sim, there's like no sense of control on that, right? So here, I don't have to worry about displacement. About that, I could displace it. But if I were to match topology underneath here, I would just have a pretty ugly ass sleeve, which wouldn't be a big deal if you could displace it, but you can't displace it. I am just stuck with just this geometry, and I'm not going to normal map that because it just looks like crap. Yeah. So it just looks like poop. So I'm basically going for the lowest density that I can get with the most best looking model I can get. So I'm thinking about how much I want the normal map to show. I basically treat the normal map like a bump map or fine detail part, not as carrying huge forms because I don't think it looks as good. So I want the mesh to be more dense. So there's not consideration for that. It might make it easier for rigor, but in any case, it's probably going to go through some kind of shot modeling. So it would just be corrected and fixed anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's our little cut. So he's going to be kicked off to rigging. Can you zoom out a little bit? Let's just take a look at him one more time. He'll be kicked off to rigging, and yeah, and then that'll be awesome. Start seeing him moving around, even though we did do some preliminary tests with Mixamo. It'll be much cooler. Let's see.
Okay, there's a comment here. Hi, Tran and Miguel. Always fun to watch the process vids. I'm working on texture too right now. Hey.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, Mano.
So yeah, so cool. So that's our little boycott, which we're going to be doing casting for as well. So all of that stuff is moving ahead. Okay, so if you notice the little things on the side of the head there.
Yeah, these are the only things that are incomplete. And
They're
you read them anyway, but
yeah, they're incomplete, but can you zoom into them? The idea is that these things would be made out of like
yarn balls.
yeah, like a yarn ball, just kind of wrapped around. So that's much harder to do. So we decided that we were going to try to scan something like a big old yarn ball. And this week we started doing some tests on that stuff. So I could show you some stuff here. So give me 1 second. So we got a pretty crazy system set up here. Let me see if I have it here. So it's a Nikon Z7, and it's got a flash trigger, and then this giant Godox flash ring, and this thing is connected to this object, not this object, this thing that it's not made for this, but I guess people are like retrofitting it to do this. So
I can't actually see that.
You can't see that?
No, I think you're only sharing a program instead of the whole screen.
Oh, let me see what that. So you couldn't even see anything I just showed.
No, I just see the
Well,
screen.
that sucks. There we go. Our beautiful faces.
Yeah, I hate that.
Okay, so sorry about that. So let's look at that again. So this is the ring flash. So we're missing a piece here, which I'll get into in a minute. But you could see here's like the yarn ball. And this is a big old yarn ball because we figured, hey, the bigger the yarn ball is, if we scan it, we'll get more detail. And then we're going to scale it down anyhow. So it's kind of perfect.
Yeah. So we were making trips. We made a trip to Michael's Arts and Crafts.
Too many trips to Michael's.
Well, it's because we don't really do like that type of, I don't know. I don't like work with yarn.
Yeah.
Or that type of stuff.
So big old yarn ball, and you can see it's on top of this platform here. We have this felt, and then we bought this like black candle holder to use as a lift, and I'll explain the reason why. So what we're gonna do is photogrammetry, and the idea is that you would go around the object and take photos from every possible angle, and then you would bring it into a program, and the program would reconstruct the model based on just texture points that it would find, right? So it just kind of sees, oh, patterns, and then it figures out where the camera is based on what? How would I describe it? Based on how the textures align next to each other. Like it figures out the alignment of all these textures and figures out the camera placement based off of that. So that's cool, but you have to go around the entire object a bazillion times. And we saw that some people were doing this retrofit kind of jerry rig system where they were grabbing this turntable setup that was actually created for you to put the camera on top of, but they were getting an extension cable, and then they were having it connected to, you could actually see the connection here, this wire here, connected to the camera's flash and to the camera, and you would run a program that basically tells the system how many photos you want. So here, for example, you can see we have like 20 photos. So what it'll basically do, if I have 20 photos, if I have 10 or 11 photos, you could see that the pie is now divided into less slices, whereas this one has, you can see 11 slices, wait 2 seconds between shots, and that turntable will automatically rotate and hit the next position. And at the end of the cycle, it'll be back to its original position, right? 11 rotations or 11 photos to do the full 360. And you could change that to whatever you want. You could put, I mean, I haven't taken it all the way to the end, but I'm assuming you could take it to 100, 200, or even higher, right? So a big part of the use of this originally is to do turntables of like aerial photography, like slow time lapse stuff, And you could put, instead of the wait time being 2 seconds, you could say, hey, take a photo every 5 seconds, and then you could let the shutter be open for that length, and you'll have like this really incredible trails on lights or whatever. But that's not what we're using it for, which is my point. We're kind of using it to be a turntable to capture a model. So 20 photos, 2 seconds in between, and it'll do the full 360. You connect it with your iPhone. So this is literally like the screen of my iPhone. You press the connect button, and then you would press the record. Interface is simple. Record here does the actual 360, and this one takes an individual photo. Why would you want to take an individual photo over the full 360? Sometimes the flash doesn't trigger for whatever reason. I'm sure it's something that I'll be able to figure out. Usually it doesn't trigger on the first photo. So by the time it comes back around, you could just press this button and it'll trigger the first frame, which is the same as essentially the last frame. And you'll take a photo and the flash will go off. So just so you know what that's for. So when you put that all together, you get something that looks like this. So you can see this is the tripod, and then the turntable. It's connected with this. This is your charging input power, and then this is a separate disc that you have to buy that goes on top for you to place objects on top of. Because again, the point of this is it's threaded for you to connect this to your camera, not for you to place an object. So they have this object thing on top. And then you get something like this. Let me see if I could find it. One second. There you go. Let me just do it on this one here. So you could see it takes the photo, and then it automatically rotates, takes the photo, automatically takes the photo. So this was 11. I set it to be very, very little just for the sake of the video demo. But and then this one is like a Frankenstein one, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, which we just showed to show you guys something more interesting than just
a yarn ball.
in a yarn ball. But you could see it's just automatic. You just put this in there, and then it just does its thing. So you could step away. So if you put 50 photos, that's what's kind of great about it. Put 50 photos, just step away, let it do its thing. Now, the downfall to this is 2 parts. The way this system usually works is it wants to figure out how the camera is rotating around the object. It's expecting you to be turning around the object, not the object to be rotating in space. So in order for it to work, it wants you to put it against a black background, right? So that it actually tricks the system or tricks reality capture into thinking that you are actually walking around the object and the space you're in is completely black. Okay, does that make sense?
It does make sense. Normally, like, just to kind of backtrack, like when I've done it before outside, you're the person moving around the stationary object. In this case, we're forcing the object to rotate. And that's not how when photogrammetry usually processes stuff. And so, yeah, that makes total sense. The black background tricks the program into thinking you're still walking around it.
Yeah, exactly. So it just thinks you're in a complete like black void.
There's a couple questions here. Well, there's a few questions. Let's answer them. One of them is, will you have look development course online in spring? You don't usually teach that online.
Yeah, let's go through this. So, will the look development course be about? No, it's not. I mean, you could ask them, but I don't think it is. I wish it were.
Yeah, it's a really good course.
So here's another one. Greetings, Miguel. Big fan of your work. Saw the short, The Voice in the Hollow, and was blown away. Very inspiring.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you for your comment. And
will the yarn ball be a permanent decoration after you're done
well,
scanning?
the yarn ball, well, it could be, I guess. It would attract a lot of dust, maybe hit too many moths.
I maybe make a hat out of it.
Okay.
So let's see what this is. What can I say? I haven't had any. So we just got into this, so we haven't had a lot of issues yet. I'm sure we're gonna see some issues. The main issue we have is that one of the objects that we ordered has not arrived yet, which is very important, which is the cross polarization filter for the flash lens.
And that's his second question.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You actually been waiting for it for
We've been waiting, yeah,
since the beginning of the year.
I mean, if you look at last episode, we kind of blasted the guy. He makes a cool product from what we've seen, but I've never seen worse customer support than the guy that sells the filter for this. Like, my God. But yeah, so we are definitely going to cross polarize it. There is a polarization filter on the lens already. So just so you guys know what that is. So the way you want to do this is you want to put a polarizer filter on the lens and also on the light source. So what that does is it completely removes any specular highlights whatsoever. If you look at like the Frankenstein one in particular, or even if you look at like the candle holder, the specularity is rotating. So that throws off the system because it doesn't know that's a highlight. So it thinks that's part of the texture, and it starts introducing noise. In particular, look at this guy, like the base and the bottom, you could see all those highlights.
Yeah.
Really, really reflective. And you're going to see that it's actually very problematic, in particular, black stuff like that, when it goes to process the scan. So you put a polarizing filter on the lens and one on the flash, and it basically removes all the specular highlights. It's kind of cool. It ends up looking like a diffuse pass for real life. If you look at somebody's face with a cross polarization setup, it's one of the creepiest things ever because their face looks completely dead. The highlights of the eyes are gone. It looks really crazy. And you realize how much detail on the face actually comes from
reflections.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the setup that we have. So you have to make sure you shoot it against black. So what are the downfalls of shooting it this way? Is you have to constantly be moving your tripod, and it's much harder to get into some particular angles. For example, the demo that I'm going to show you guys here, we're going to get a lot of noise because we don't have the cross polarizer yet. But also, I didn't get some of the angles like from very low angles, like especially Frankenstein has like this really deep brows. So we didn't get some of that. So you'll see some of the issues with that. But again, it's fine. We're gonna, as we get better at this, we're gonna show you guys our process. But basically, that's it. So
here's another question. Have you looked into nerf scanning?
We're gonna definitely do nerf scanning. I think nerf scanning, from what I've seen so far, it's the future, but it's fun to mess with. But I don't know how much it's really ready for prime time, but amazing nonetheless, for sure. So this system, the turntable, I think the whole setup was around almost $400. The only thing to be careful is, depending on what camera you have, the cable to this thing could be kind of tricky. So we got one that was for a Nikon camera, but it was for an older Nikon. So since we have the Z7, it uses a completely different input, so we had to get a new cable. So we did like 1,000 trips also to film tools and Sammy's camera and everything. So it's been
annoying.
Yeah, it's been annoying. And then this flash, I think, was around $350 or $400. Freaking incredible. So, okay, one other thing. So because you're trying to cross polarize this and remove all the lighting specularity, the way we did that is we lowered our f-stop to the point that if I took a photograph without the flash, you would see nothing. It was completely black. And then you have to balance it so that when the flash goes off, the flash becomes the only light source in the room, even though the room is completely lit. Does that make sense? So
It makes sense to me,
you're
but
darkening the
when I saw it, it
exposure
makes sense.
so that
Yeah.
everything is black until the flash goes off because there is already light in the room. So you're like kind of calibrating it. So that's another thing we did. This flash is freaking bright as hell. And again, that's going to be my future hat. So, okay. So here we go. So I'm going to start with the Frankenstein one since it's a little bit cooler. So let me just hide this. So reality capture. What's great about it is it does have this wizard, and it's very easy to follow the steps. But I kind of there's not. It's really simple. Like you could really figure this thing out in just a couple minutes. Um, so the main thing we do is I just come over here and I just go to input, and I just go to the folder that has all the images already there. So I'm just going to bring all of them in here. And you could see that I really did only 2 angles. I probably should have done one more angle that was even lower. You're also going to see how problematic the black areas are on the back base of Frankie here. All the images that I brought in are JPEGs. I do have raw photos, but again, just to move this forward quickly, I just did it with the JPEGs. And you could see here, all the images are there. And you could see what the problems are going to be. You could already see it here. So it's going to think that that's a texture. And
Yes,
then,
and keep in mind we're missing that cross polarization that removes that,
yeah,
which we are getting soon, finally.
yeah, it
So,
should be arriving today or tomorrow. But you could see from that to, let's go to these here. Yeah, it doesn't, there you go. So you could see the specularity could just completely throw it off because it doesn't understand what is happening. It doesn't understand highlights. So you're not going to get a lot of detail there. It's going to be noisy as hell. So anyway, all the images are there. So I'll just select all the images here and we'll just go to our workflow and we can go to our alignment and I could just go to align images. And when I do that, it's going to take a few minutes. Yeah, I really like the Nerf stuff. I mean, without a doubt, that's the future. Like no doubt in my mind. The amount of jobs that's going to kill off for digital sets, my god. But it's incredible. So, okay. So you can see it says added 28 images. I'm not sure why it's not adding these other ones here. That's something that I have to figure out. But okay, we'll take a look and see. So we have this here, and now I could just go over here to my workflow, and I could press align again just to see because I have noticed that when I do press align again, it sometimes um, reprocess it, and I get better alignment. So I'll do it one more time.
dead air. Okay.
So yeah, these guys are still giving me some issues. They're not showing up here. But okay, so let's take a look here. So I'm going to go to calculate model and I'm going to go to preview quality and it's going to take a second. So there you go. And you could see a preview version of the model. So few things that you notice right away. Even at this resolution, you could already see that the back of the head, because it's black and reflective,
It has issues.
has issues. Right away, you could see that.
Wouldn't it have issues just from being black, even if it wiped out the specularity?
Probably.
Like it would just be like a black thing because it's
Probably.
it would be pitch black and
Yeah.
flat.
That's a possibility for sure.
Yeah.
Now, there might be detail there that we don't even see, right? Like little dirt or whatever, little scratches that maybe you would be able to pick up, but it might not know the difference between those scratches and the highlights.
At least I was able to separate from the background.
Yeah. So this is our low quality one, and we could come over here to calculate model, and we could go to normal quality. This is going to take a little bit longer, but you could see that we're going to get
Miguel's not going to spray that thing.
no, but I know what he's saying. So there is a 3D scanning spray that you could just spray on this stuff, and what it does is it evaporates.
Does it evaporate?
Yeah, completely.
But you wouldn't put it on like something important to you. You wouldn't like spray one of your collectibles.
No. I mean, this guy I might, because he's like made out of rubber and he's gonna be fine. But I wouldn't do that to like my Rancor back here. Like none of this stuff would ever get sprayed with
Yeah.
this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's very valid. It probably would make everything easier.
For production, I would.
But remember, like when we were shooting years ago, we did this project called the Ningyo, and we shot stuff, and our gaffer wanted to like spray these antiques with this like
dulling spray.
Dulling spray. You can't spray those antiques like
Yeah.
with this spray. Like, does it even come off? Like these are like
those don't come off.
Yeah, those are like antiques, and we're like, no.
So you can see here, looks much better. I mean, hey, you know what? It's not so bad in the back. So this is still not the final quality. So I'm thinking that one of the things that could be causing issues here, and this is something we're going to do a test on here, is the fact that you see this background here, and that might be throwing it off. So I'm going to pass this. I'm going to keep showing you some stuff, but I am going to just bring this into Photoshop and just paint this stuff out. Because this is an issue. Again, because remember, it wants the black space so that it thinks that the object is floating in limbo. But the minute that the model moves, but the background stays static, it's like, wait, what the hell is going on here? So it's throwing it off. That's probably what's going on. So I could just paint this out. But I'll pass this to Tran first. Not yet, though. But we'll definitely do that and then see if that fixes it. It fixed it on another one that I did, so I have a feeling it'll do the same thing there. So, all right, so you could see this is our medium quality. Now, if we come over here to calculate model, we have high quality, and this is going to give us like the best quality. This is going to take a few minutes.
This is so much faster than Agisoft. Like I remember before Reality Capture came out, we used that, and that was really, really slow.
Yeah.
Like really, really slow.
Yeah. The only thing, let's see what this says. I also found that having more photos.
Zephyr's another program, right? I thought Reality Capture was the best though. Like from what I heard. I've never used that.
Yeah, the more photos, the better. So right now we're only technically processing 30 photos because it didn't like the other angle. 30 photos, this is not very bad. This is not bad. But yeah, definitely. I think if we took like 1,000 photos, it'd probably be better. And I'm still kind of weighing like what is the most efficient way. Is it better to put it on the turntable and just step away, or should you just go? I mean, how long does it really take to take 30 photos if you walk around the thing and just get into every freaking angle possible? That might be the smartest way, I think. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I like that setup because I'm not very good at taking pictures at all.
Well, once it's set up for you, you just press a button.
Well, that's what I mean. Like you're saying, is it better to walk around or to use a turntable? I like the turntable.
Yeah.
You just probably need to adjust the angles to get underneath and on top. Like have one top, medium, and then underneath. So basically three angles, right, from the camera.
One, I think we need a longer lens. That way we're zoomed in much closer to the object, which would basically remove the background, and we would be much closer to the black. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you're compressing the space. So our lens right now is, I believe it's 35, which is pretty wide. So I do have a longer lens, but not by much. But I think if we had a longer lens, we would be compressing the background. We would be getting much more of the black. And then I don't think we would have the issue. I'm convinced the issue is the fact that we're seeing the background static and the model is moving, and then it's like, wait, what the hell is going on here?
A couple comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually remember that feature. I haven't used it for a while. That is a nice feature, the auto mask.
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't have to go in Photoshop every single one.
Photoshop has a pretty incredible auto masking also now. Like, it selects an object, which is borderline black magic. It's pretty incredible. Let me see if I can open that up.
And tripod is great because it eliminates any movement, associate manual, open camera. Yeah, that's for me because I suck.
And that setup, by the way, is really freaking heavy.
Oh, it is heavy. I wouldn't be able to hold it still.
Yeah, that zoom, the ring light is a beast. If you figure out how to add an arc shape orbiting movement. Oh, like a rig that would do kind of this here. Is that what you're talking about? But you would need to get a rig for that, yeah? That's this question here. So let's take a look here. One second.
Setting up any new thing always takes a while. When we first got our mocap system, it took a while just to go, what is this? How do you put this on?
This stream is not, hey, look how cool we are. It's more like, hey,
this is what we're
trying to figure it out.
Yeah, basically look at us being stupid and not knowing how to do certain things.
What happened last week was, someone is asking what happened last week. Last week, our internet just would not start. So we had a lot of issues the week before, so we had to change our internet provider. Okay, so I'm bringing in all these images into Photoshop, and let's just see if this will fix it. I'm going to do one photo initially just to see. So you could see if I go to my select, if I click on this guy here and I go to select subject, it's going to take a second. But look at that. That's pretty insane.
That is pretty good.
So I'm just going to erase this stuff back here. I'm not going to just delete everything outside because I'm not sure if it's part of his hair or whatever. So I'll just do this. Okay. So we'll just save this one.
Do we have a longer lens or we'd have to get one?
We'd have to get one. So let's try this one here. I mean, we could get one. Just lenses get expensive. I had my head scanned using 700.
Oh, that's interesting data. You scanned your head 700 photos using iPhone. In reality, capture produced very wonky model. Was the first 1.5 hours processing resulted in almost perfect clean model.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to see that. Do you have that online somewhere we could see?
Well, he'd be showing us his head, so
That's okay.
Yeah, if you want to show us your head, you can show us our head.
So just removing this stuff here. I could just obviously just mask this out, but I kind of rather feather it out. This should move fairly quickly. I know it's not fun. But
Cool Photoshop masking trick. Thanks for sharing. Well, at least you got something
yeah.
from this.
Yeah, the subject thing, try it on some other stuff. It's crazy. Like I've tried it on like, oh, there's no way it's gonna get this like cat, right? There's no way. It's got fur and everything. And it gets it. And it's just crazy. It's so good. So let's just do this.
It processed it into metahuman model for work purposes, so it's not really public. I just flubbed that everything. Let me say it again. I processed it into a metahuman model for work process purposes. So it's not really public. That's okay. We're just kind of kidding.
No, I wanted to see it, but that's I get it.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't really expect anyone to go, here's my head. I wouldn't show anyone my head. So I wouldn't want anyone to see my head. Everyone you can see my face, but still.
All right, this is really boring.
It is super boring.
Right. I just want to see if okay, let me just see.
Oh, it doesn't show up.
What doesn't show up?
Well, look, he showed us his head here in the chat, but you can't actually show it. It just says an anime head.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's the joke. All right, so let's
Alexa.
Which one did you want?
our Alexa's gone crazy.
Alexa,
so, okay,
stop.
so let's bring these back in
Did
here.
you need home lights?
Alexa, shut up.
So I want to see if this
Well,
does-
you have a question. Why not crop the images?
why haven't I cropped it? Because I'm afraid to crop it yet at the moment. I haven't done enough tests, so I will try that, but I want to see if it works without the cropping first. But yeah, probably cropping it would be smarter. But I'm not that smart. so let's see what happens first. Hey, this is the exact same process on the voice in the hollow. It was us completely fumbling our way to
Yeah, and then we got somewhere at the end. I'm lost. What are you guys doing right now?
Okay, so what are we doing? We are taking a bunch of photographs of that Frankenstein, and from that, we are calculating a 3D model that looks like this. So it didn't capture the other one. All right, so let's just go to the high res one. So okay, so I'm just gonna go to highest quality, and then I'll just show you the textures. I'll export it out, and then Tran, you can show like your clean and process, and then I could do this thing in the background. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So does that make sense?
Well, photogram, like for this project in particular, the idea is like we want to actually be able to scan more surfaces and objects and textures and certain parts for the character. So we invested in a setup like this, and so we're just showing our setup basically.
Yeah, just so you know what our plan with this is and why this is important. Like obviously, like scanning a ball, a Frankenstein or whatever is not our goal. What we actually were thinking is we're like, okay, this thing has to be a miniature world for these little guys. What if we went to the park or we went to the beach and we built out, because a lot of this is going to take place inside of some caverns, but we don't want the mega scanned rocks because they're human scale. So we want a lot of detail up close. So we're like, what if we built out like half a tunnel just on the beach with rocks and whatever and just scan the whole thing? That way we don't have to bring this mess to our studio. We could just do it there, scan the whole thing. It'll be cross polarized, so it would be completely specularless or whatever. It'll look great, and then we could just go in and mirror it, and then just have a perfect 3D model. So that's where this is going to ideally lead. So we're going to go into that phase, but this is just us basically figuring this out. Yeah.
Yeah. We're still missing certain parts, so they should be arriving soon.
Yeah.
We're missing a very important part.
Yes. But this is a process, guys. It's waiting is part of CG. So
Yeah.
does anybody have any questions while that process is, let's see, Pixel Pro. Yeah, we've seen a few awesome videos online for sure. So that one is good. William Foucher has some great ones. So there's a bunch of great ones if you want to get the information from those guys. We're just showing how we approach the film as a whole. This is not necessarily a tutorial on, we're not masters at 3D scanning, nor do we care to be once this project is done. It's just, we got to get this movie done. This is the new thing to learn.
Yeah,
right?
we basically somehow get by. We just basically just learn what we need to learn in order to make the project we're trying to make.
And then we forget how we did it.
It's because our brain capacity is small.
We actually would go back and watch our own videos on the Voice in the Hollow to figure out how we did certain things when we were like far enough away from when we initially did it. We were like, how did we do that? And we would watch our own videos, which was pretty embarrassing.
How big would you say your CG team becomes by the end of these shorts? It's pretty tiny. We have like good people helping us, right? Well, rigging we don't do, so we always have to have a rigger. That's not us. Animation we don't do, so
We did a lot of mocap.
Yeah, we did a lot of mocap.
And I did a lot of the mocap cleanup. So
yeah, and then what else? Who else is on our team?
The big thing.
Chris
the big
is
team,
really important.
Yeah, the big thing that we
So-
outsource is on the Voice in the Hollow was the rigging and there was a lot of hand animation at the end.
Yeah.
But that was two guys that helped us.
Well, yeah, Alon did the anteater animation,
Three.
and he's really good.
But Alon helped us on like two shots. One really important one, which was when she was dying, and then the anteater stuff. So by no means small shots, but the full time it's Tran and I, and then these guys jump in and help us get stuff done. Chris from Gnomon helped us a lot on mocap cleanup and processing stuff. But it's always animation and
But we definitely,
rigging.
most of our animation had to be mocap, or else we wouldn't be able to finish it. We need so much, a much bigger team and money to be able to have that much animation in our last project. And then we have Chris B, who does the face shapes because he's an expert in that. Yeah. So it's a really small team, but the people we have are extremely good.
Why do we use Unreal? It's just so much faster. There's no comparison in the speed, even with Redshift. Redshift is fast, but Unreal is real time.
Yeah, it's really, well, there's things that I feel like I lose. Like I don't think I can get my materials to look as good in Unreal as I can in any kind of renderer. So there's that. There's like complications. Like now we're dealing with hair. It's not as easy to deal with hair in Unreal as it is with when you're just working in Maya. There's all this extra crap and stuff and all these problems that you have to deal with. But as far as like laying out and lighting your scene and then the render times, there is like no render time. So if you were going Redshift, you'd just be hitting hard render times no matter how fast it is in comparison. Like I would say the longest time it took to render a sequence was 30 minutes or an hour. And then within that sequence, there might be 100 frames. And you're getting high resolution, no noise renders for 100 frame sequence in like 1 hour. And that's the longest. And that's, I know Redshift is supposed to be faster than V-Ray, but I've never been able to render a final frame quality for 1 hour ever. So yeah, just the render times are insane. Like I don't think we'd still be working on it. So had we done Voice in a Hollow in our traditional pipeline, we'd still be talking about Voice in a Hollow. Right now, we would be rendering. And rendering is really brutal for us because we're not like a big company. So we used to have a setup with like 12.
13.
Oh, it was 13 computers. that weren't our work computers. And it was really, really, really hot because it was inside our house. And then we had like these giant fans blowing at it all the time. And so you can, like, if I were to try to talk to Miguel, it'd be like you're inside like a wind tunnel and it'd be shouting. Like I'd be sitting next to him and it'd be like, "Hey, Miguel." And then Miguel
Sounded
would be
like
like,
you were on an
"What?"
aircraft carrier.
Yeah, you couldn't hear anything in the house. It was just hot. And then your electricity, the circuits would break, they would snap. So your electricity goes down in your house while you're trying to render. It was just a disaster. And then one time one of the computers got so hot it like burned the table that was on.
A table that was part of like IKEA's like kitchen thing, which was like, oh, you could put a hot iron on a hot stove iron on this thing.
Yeah, so it was like an industrial table, and
Yeah.
it like burned it black. So we had all kinds of I mean, that's not even going into the problems. It was so hot in our house.
That's what it was, right? They said you
So-
could put like a hot pan on it and it would not damage it.
Oh, and
Yet if this thing melted it.
our place was like past 100 degrees. And
Yeah,
we were
it was an oven.
it was an oven. It was just so unbearable. And the electricity bill was extraordinarily high. So, like, if talking about comfort, just even like that, like if you're a studio, you don't worry about those things because you don't like live with your render farm, like the way we do. But for us, just the quality of life was really horrible, just from trying to render in your house. So let's see what other things. Anyway, I not overheating.
The Nino, yeah, the Nino is. Well, thank you first of all. I appreciate that. What
Thank you, Chatty on Fire.
the Nino is the heartbreak of our life. It's the most we've ever worked for nothing. Right? I mean, would you not just?
It was a horrible. It took a very long time.
It took a very long time. When we were done with it, it got into a bunch of film festivals. It got picked up by a very big production company. We got to meet like Jerry Bruckheimer. It was pretty crazy, actually. That whole experience was pretty insane. Like we were sitting in a room with Jerry Bruckheimer. It was freaking nuts.
Oh, we have all kinds of stories.
We have all kinds of stories.
They had like a valet for parking, but the parking lot was really small and it was right in front of the entrance, but you had to like valet park for some reason. It was like this tiny, I don't know, and it had like a giant fountain in there. I don't know, it just made me think about South Park. Where
I would be careful what you say, Tran.
Okay.
But yeah, so we met with a lot of people, and yeah, it was crazy. So anyway, the movie got picked up by a big production company, and it got optioned. So option, the way it works is they basically give you not a ton of money. I mean, it's in the tens of thousands, but not close to 100. How about that? Not even close to 50.
Yeah.
So you're getting some money to hold the film while they develop it, and that whole process took a few years. We were talking with like, because it was a big company. It was a company that did like the John Wick movies. They we're meeting with like big actors and the whole thing, and this thing is going to happen, and it just COVID hit, and it just kind of fizzled out, and everything was for nothing. I mean, we worked so hard, not just on the short, but then on writing the script. Oh my God, it was
a lot of work. It took so many years, and our biggest choke point for just completing the film was the rendering power. We just didn't have that power to render all those images and those frames that we needed. And so that slowed us down because we'd have to come up with so many different ways to go, well, how do we render this? And it also influenced the look of our movie, and I don't think in a bad way. But the cameras were much less dynamic for a big reason because we just didn't have the rendering power. If you look at Voice in the Hollow, everything is much more dynamic because we didn't have to worry about going, well, we can't render this.
Yeah. Without a doubt, the violence and Voice in the Hollow comes from how angry we were after that film.
Well, not necessarily angry, but just like
We were down.
we're very down and very frustrated.
Yeah.
So for us, Unreal is this really big change for us because it you have to invest so much time. Like the Nino took
It took 4 years.
it took 4 years to make, and we worked on it full
And
time.
then we worked on the script for a year. So we put 5 years into it for
And it was full time, and that means I didn't have a full time job making a nice salary somewhere else. So you had to make a lot of sacrifices. So yeah, I don't think that if we didn't have Unreal that we could just do that again.
Yeah, we didn't have it in us.
Yeah.
So anyway, so here's the high res scan. So you can see it looks pretty good, except for the areas that are, like we said, are problematic. I think, like I said, that has to do with the whole, the black just not lining up. I am going to try cropping it. I think that is a smart idea, but I'm not going to do that while you guys are watching. But so we have this, and you can see that I could come over here and press the texture button. It's going to take a minute. It's not going to take as long, but it's going to apply all the photos back onto it as a texture map. So let's give it a second and see.
It seems pretty fast. So there's a question. So it's gone for good.
I think we have some crazy news to say, but we can't say it yet. But it's not about the Nino, but it might come back around. I almost feel like we need to do another film and then come back to it. So the biggest problem with the Nino was two things. One was COVID didn't help us at all. The other thing is we're first time filmmakers, and the budget started getting big because it was like this Indiana Jones spectacle, and it's not the way you want to do it. You probably want to do like a lower budgeting and work your way up to that. I mean, there was a lot of times where we thought like, this is it. We have, you know, a AAA star loving the script. He says he wants to be a part of it, and you think your life is going to change like overnight, and then just you think that you're convinced like, oh my god, this was all for this, and then when it all fizzled out, it was a big time bummer for sure.
Did a pretty good job. It didn't seem to bake in a lot of that spec.
No, it did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
You could see the specular here, but nonetheless, it looks pretty good. So again, the issues are here, but I think that's all because of me. I think even if I walked around and took the photos like really sloppy, it would look better than this. And then the cross polarizer would remove all the little ugly noise that it has. So now I could just export this thing. So I could just go to export. And you're going to get this thing here. And this is a 2-part thing here where it's going to ask you like, what do you want to export this as? So OBJ, you could do that. You could come down here and you have a bunch of other ones. Dense mesh and textures. So we could do OBJ.
I want an FBX.
You want FBX?
Yes, because FBX could store. How is the color going to come in?
Well, let's do it.
Is there FBX? There should be.
There it is. So let's save it in here. So maybe take over the screen for a second while I do this, Tran.
Okay,
So let me just pay this real quick.
hold on. I just launched ZBrush, and it takes over my whole screen.
Well, you could just do this for now.
Oops. Okay, that was weird. Okay, try launching it again. So it's going to go into ZBrush so that we can clean it up. I actually haven't done that much with this setup so far, so probably might be surprised or unsure about certain things. And if you want, you can see this guy. If you missed out, he's got a ton of UDIMs. This is actually pretty heavy. If I look at it and count my UDIMs, 10. It's got like maybe almost, I'd say like almost 40 UDIMs on this character. This will be much heavier character than what we did in Voice in the Hollow. How's it going?
Give me a second.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions you want to ask while Miguel is processing this? Sorry. I don't know how many of you guys are in California, but it's raining a lot right now, which is really unusual. I mean, getting all kinds of like flood alerts and flooding in our area. Okay, let's see what I can show. So I'll show a couple of things that I've been messing with when Miguel is doing that before. Let me just load this file. So you're in Cali. Snow 2, just starting Subspainter is an awesome program. It is a super awesome program. I teach a class at Gnomon on this, and I really, really like Substance Painter. So just in case, just to kind of backtrack, at the beginning of the stream, I kind of mentioned the reason why this guy has so many funny colors is to actually break up, for me to visualize the breakup of how the character is going to be separated inside a substance. So if I have a single mesh like this, and I have my UVs laid out, you might go, okay, this is a lot of UDIMs. And you don't want to actually carry this many UDIMs. So this is 10, 11, 12, 13 UDIMs into one object, into substance, because you won't be able to work. It'll basically just crash. So what you can do if you actually want to have a lot of UDIMs is you can take your single object and create multiple shader assignments like I have here. And all I did, so I named them close A, B, C, D, E, and each one has a color. And you don't have to make it funny color like this. It's just something I did. And once I basically assigned all my materials, I just selected the entire thing and exported as one FBX. And FBX format is actually pretty important. It does take it in differently if you bring it in as an OBJ. So my recommendation is just stick with FBX. Once you bring it in, if you take a look over here, you can see like under my textureless set, this is how it's going to read it. And every naming that is in here, maybe you can't see the words because it's not very sharp, but they basically inherit the naming of the materials that I assign inside of Maya. And then you can see my clothing that was originally one piece in Maya will be broken up. It just takes a moment, right? So now here I have clothes A, B, C, I can just hide these. Right, so we can see all my parts. Now, when I look at, say, close A, it's only being assigned to my first 3 UDIMs, and then close B, my next 2 UDIMs. It also makes sense not to scatter your UDIMs. So when I lay them out, I did think about putting them next to each other and how I was going to break them up. What you don't want is to have one floating UDIM here, and that is not a good thing, as if you just have one UV shell or just having them be assigned all over the place. You want them next to each other, especially for Unreal. So that's what I have here. As far as how much, what I've done so far is I actually started bringing in some cloth textures that I've been trying out, and they're actually really, really good. So as far as like getting really nice cloth textures, like here's one, it's a quilted texture. It's not that easy to get nice cloth, right? You can, or making it from scratch is difficult, or it's very time consuming. I think if you wanted to make it from scratch, you can use a program like Substance Designer. But it's, again, still time consuming, and I don't really care to make cloth from scratch. And it's kind of tricky to try to find sources that you can even purchase to get them. Megascan has quite a bit, but it doesn't have enough. I think it could have more. So we might, talk to Miguel about this, talk like doing some scanning of cloth, which is actually a completely different setup. If we do that, we can go over that, but I'm not sure that we will, because maybe the stuff I found is pretty good. So here I have a quilt pattern on him. Let's see. Can't seem to hide it. Some of the other things I'm thinking about, like just playing with different textiles here. Here's another one. And they do hold up extremely well, because, again, I have a lot of UDIMs and a lot of resolutions on this stuff. Another one that we might play with is, let's see, let's pull this up here. Let's try the Chanel. Right, this one, it feels quite good. Now, it's still missing proper shading, right? Like without like Fresnel in the shader, it doesn't look as good. So that will have to be set up in Unreal. Let's see. So you guys use an ID map to separate objects with few shared UDIMs instead of one object with multiple UDIMs. I didn't use an ID map. I know that is something you can do for games. Basically, all you have to do, I don't know if you use Maya, but if you are using Maya, you just need to create shaders like this. So literally, they are just straight up shaders, and they have naming. And all I did, for example, is I might have gone here and said, okay, let's just assign everything my first shader. So now it's solid. And I went to my UVs. And then I would select, okay, according to my shells, this next set here, and just assign it another shader. And maybe decide, okay, these I want to texture together. Assign another shader. And the colors are really arbitrary. There's no meaning to any of the colors that I choose. There's just something.
They just have to be easy to identify.
Yeah, you don't even need to change the color. It can just all be gray. But it's hard for me to visualize that. So I like to visualize it by actually assigning color. So all you have to do is assign the faces, and that's it. So there's no ID map in particular or anything like that. And then all it does is it recognizes how to separate according to that. But you have to make sure that it's an FBX format. Cloth looks great, thank you. Substance definitely slows my computer to crawl, especially when baking maps. Would you choose RAM over GPU to run it well? No, I would choose GPU. The stronger GPU you have, the Substance will just run better. And you also want to limit your UDIM use. I don't know if you're using UDIM. But it does rely on having a very good graphics card. All texturing programs, in my experience, really need a good graphics card. Let's see. You're using cloth textures, not from Marvelous? Yeah, I would never, I don't think Marvelous really provides, I don't see it as a texturing program. What I got from Marvelous was just a cloth model, right? And if you actually look at it, it's extremely triangulated. And the rest of my mesh is much cleaner. So these are actually properly, well, not the ear thing, but this is actually properly modeled. This clothing part, these parts here are actually have more clean topology. You can see it has like a really clean grid. And the reason why these are clean is because they're going to be rigged with the body. And this from Marvelous will not be rigged. This will just be simulated straight from Marvelous. So that's kind of how it's being broken up and planned. Let's see. Assigning different materials is the thing to use for ID map. I guess that I just think I wouldn't call it an ID map, but you can call it whatever. Like to me, an ID map, you could actually bake an ID map, but I never really do that. So if you come into the bake, there is something like that, right? So I guess technically it could be seen as an ID map, but I've never really called it an ID map. So that's what I have going on so far here. And not so much stuff because I've been feeling very, very sick for some reason. Now, one of the things that is tricky when you're trying to deal with patterns. So let's say I have something like this quilt. Let me just duplicate this. And just reset the settings here. And let's see what that looks like. Okay. One of the things that is tricky is when you come across a seam like this, right? So you can see how it doesn't really line up. You could try to manually line things up, but it doesn't really work out very well. Also, for this back pattern shape here, the quilt is like going in the wrong kind of sideways. I do not want it to be rotated sideways. So there's like, just rotational issues and seam issues. And normally seam issues are not a big deal with most textures because you can usually fix them by doing a triplanar projection. But it won't work out well on something like this for me because it can have kind of a weird blending like this here. So triplanar projection can help blend any seam problems you might have. But again, it could also not work out on patterns that are very crisp or very clear like this. So you can see the pattern looks really, really strange. Really odd here. So one way I'm trying to get around this is duplicating this material a couple of times. So it looks like I'm just slapping the material on, but I'm not really, I'm actually having to do a couple things. The way I would do this here is I'm actually going to change this into like a planar projection or a couple of things first. I know that I need to have a seam, right? And I don't think that the seam, like maybe a real clothing seam, not like a CG seam. And I don't want the CG seam to be right here because I don't think it looks that good. I kind of want to minimize the actual clothing seam texturally. So I'm thinking maybe a seam here. Let's hide the sleeves. Okay, come back. It takes a moment. And I want a seam here, right? So these are, and then if the pattern breaks or maybe here I can patch it up with something that looks a little bit nicer. So I'm thinking here, the way to kind of get around it is maybe to use like a planar projection. So if I change this here from triplanar to planar, it just becomes a single plane like this. and I can just kind of move it around. It's actually in the place I want it to be. And I can rotate it if I want to. Now it has this big square box like this. If I scale it down, it will, control how far that projection extends. And you can see it's, as a planar projection, it's just a single plane. So it's not a triplanar. But it gives me a lot of control. So I can move it around and then line it up and have it look the way I want. Then what I'm doing after that is I'm actually, I place a mask on this, right? So now I can't see anything because my mask is black. And then I can place a paint layer here on my mask and paint white where I want this to show up, right? And I can do it, and I can see it's over here. And I can paint it more cleanly. Now, one of the things about substance is when you paint in a 2D window, even though I was painting over here, you can see it paints underneath, which is really weird. And that's because the paint tool is set to behave like it's painting in 3D, even though you're painting in 2D. You can change that very easily under alignment, tangent wrap, just set it to UV. And then you can just paint it flat as if it was like in Photoshop. So now I can paint this mask here. And you can see there is a seam right down the middle. And then I can paint this side over here. And now this is not a very good paint job because it's very sloppy. But normally I wouldn't keep it sloppy. I'm just kind of demoing. And now I'll have this side when I go back to this view. And then on this back view, I can just place another piece like this one here on the back and then rotate and position how I want. So it just takes a couple materials to kind of patch them together. So it's kind of deceptive when you're dealing with patterns, just how to lay that pattern out and make it feel like it's not CG seams with this type of stuff. So those are things I'm kind of dealing with on this character. If your UVs are straight, you're usually pretty good. And my UVs here are not straight. The reason why they're not straight is because I packed them together and to get as much resolution and to reduce the number of UDIMs. But when you do that, you actually make texturing a little bit harder. So I just kind of made the sacrifice. On other pieces here, let's say which one is this? Let's go to C. Are you ready, Miguel?
Almost.
Okay. It's probably D. So if you look at this one, this is actually laid out pretty straight, and it's actually this section over here. And you can see I can just lay this quilt pattern very easily, super clean on top, so that I don't really have to work hard to fix that. So there's just pros and cons. And to me, I guess maybe a lot of thought and kind of planning underneath all this stuff. Let's see. The other thing I guess I'm thinking about is how, some of this is going to affect lighting because the objects are very bright. We'll just have to see. Like things that are brighter will light a little bit differently than something that is darker. So we'll see how that goes. Not sure why these are not showing up, but that's what I have here for now. And I should be able to get through this pretty quickly. I have been a little bit slower because I've been very ill for some reason, and I'm not sure why. Let's see if there's any questions. What's the process? You finish the model, rig it, texture it, then animate it, bring it back to Marvelous, bake close simulation as Alembics, then export to UE, same as in Witness. I don't know what they do in the Witness as far as their pipeline. I imagine it's just different because it's not Unreal. So the model has to be done. It has to be rigged.
I think he means like the marvelous part of it. Is that
Oh.
what they did on?
Well, everybody uses Marvelous that I know to make their clothing, but they don't always use Marvelous to sim the cloth. I don't know what they do if they do that over there. Marvelous simulation is really good. Animate it, bring it back to Marvelous. So yeah, it's something like that. So once the model is rigged and then it receives some kind of animation, whether it's mocap or hand animated, most likely there'll be a lot of mocap. The model is brought back into Maya with the animation. And then what happens is I don't have a rig because we don't have one. Pretend the rig is actually in here. Well, maybe I can kind of fake it. Give me 1 second. I can pull up like a Mixamo one, which is really dirty, just by the way. So I do a lot of tests with just Mixamo stuff because it's fast and it auto rigs it and it's cheap. And the tests are just to see how it looks and how it's performing before it actually gets rigged. So this is pretty terrible auto rig. But say, for example, this has an animation, and then the clothing that's made in Marvelous wouldn't be a part of this, right? Let's see if I have something better. Stand cover. Well, we'll just stick with this. And then once I have everything here, what I do next is I export the selection to Alembic. And there's a couple of steps that we actually do on this. There's usually material assignments that you want to put on the Alembic. This way, when the Alembic is actually, so there's two things I want from this Alembic. I want this Alembic to go into Marvelous so I can get the Marvelous sim. And I'm going to use the same Alembic file to be brought into Unreal Engine, right? And since I want it for two purposes, I might as well just do it correctly. If I want the materials to automatically be assigned once I bring it into Unreal, what you want to do is you want to just create like materials that will identify, I guess it's material IDs. And I usually just use Lambert's. I'm usually careful about I use V-Ray a lot and I like it. But I would never use a V-Ray shader to ID it because sometimes it won't recognize it. So say, for example, I have different materials on this guy, like he's broken up into 3 different materials for whatever reason. I'll have these named and they will literally just be assigned. So let's just make weird colors here. Let's do RGB. He doesn't have UVs. Okay, this is one of my earlier tests. And so once I have something like that, and I would just assign the shader. It's usually assigned according to UVs. And I'm just assigning it randomly. It does have to be according to the UVs because that's what I'm working as. And then I export this as an Alembic. I set my frame range. And what you want to do is obviously write your UVs because if you don't put UV right, your UVs disappear when you export, then you won't have any UVs. You want to write face sets. So the face sets is what identifies materials in Unreal. And the world space just puts it in the correct world space. And then you just hit export. Then that Alembic is brought into Marvelous. Let's load Marvelous up here. Skip that. And I bring it into like a final file like this. So this file is final in the sense that my UVs are being laid out here, right? So you can see this layout is actually not done in Maya. It's completely done in Marvelous. And I want to make sure that the UVs are the same. So I can't open like some older version where the UVs are not there because it'll be a big problem. Then what I'll do is I'll usually import a morph target, which I don't know if I can find. Did you want to show some stuff, Miguel?
I need like 2 more minutes.
Okay. I'm actually not sure. Well, I'll just open one of my tests. The morph target will blend shape it into the first frame pose. The problem I'm having right now is just I'm digging up old files, and they've changed. So let's just run. Here's this one here. Let's see what it says here. Biggest issue with alembics is that you can't change them once they're baked. At least I know. Don't know any tech, at least the backtracking, rebaking if a scene changes. And if it doesn't work in real time in a game, that's why, well, alembics is how we always work. So it works out great for us. And the reason why it works out great is because we do a lot of shot modeling. So usually that's an extra step where maybe something's not working out great in the rig, or we're having issues with something, and it's just basically you're just sculpting on top of the animation. So that's this whole other step that we have. Once alembic is brought in, then he, and take a second.
So I could show some stuff.
Okay, I'll just wrap this up. Then it's simulated like this. And then once that simulation is done, that is exported as alembic. So the body is alembic, everything comes in as alembic with no rig. You ready?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I have been feeling bad.
So here are the two objects inside of Maya. So again, we have the noise issues because of the lack of cross polarization, and so it's still not nowhere the level that it will be once we get that all figured out. But you can see all the pores are actually showing. It still looks really messy and all this stuff over here. So we hope to get that all figured out by next week. This one here, actually, like when you see it lit, it actually works pretty well. I thought this was going to look way worse than that.
You mean the yarn ball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like considering it doesn't have the cross polarization,
Well, it was pretty matte compared to the Frankenstein.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. So you can see we get that out from there, and then we can we turn off the default shader. You can see that all the colors are there.
Is that vertex color right now?
I believe so. There is a texture, so
Oh, there is actually a texture assigned.
yeah, but there is a vertex color export option.
Oh, okay.
And you can see that the areas underneath are not getting a lot of detail. So I got to figure out some issues. The main thing I got to figure out is you can see when I process the photos from underneath first, I got a model that looks good from the bottom, but then the two are just not working together. So if I come over here and I put like normal quality, you'll see under the nose now looks good, but then the top of the head no longer works because I shot it from two angles, from this and from this. So only one set at a time seems to be working. So I got to figure out what's going on with that. But
do you want to pass me the model?
no, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
No, I think let's figure that out, and then we'll do that next week.
Okay, cool.
I'm not doing the long build, so it should be done really quick. But let's just take a look at it from below. But anyway, you can see pretty simple so far. I think by next week we'll have this completely figured out. We're going to get the cross polarization filter and then you'll actually start seeing it used on the actual character rather than like in this kind of vacuum. It's a lot of waiting. Weeks are really boring. This is one of those weeks. This used to take hours, though. So it actually is pretty impressive. Yeah, it's still taking a moment. There it is. It's coming. So here you go. So you can see this is the one from below, and you can see the nose now feels better. This is not the highest quality one, but you can see the areas around the eyes now are all being picked up correctly. Under the chin looks much better. However, because this was shot from below, we don't have the top of the head. So I just have to figure out how to get both of these to register. I'm almost 100% convinced it has to do with the black not being set up perfectly yet, but we'll have that figured out by next week. So yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up. If anybody has any questions, let
Yeah.
us know.
Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
We'll have more to show next week. Probably talking about cleaning up the scans and some progress stuff on the main character.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you guys saw the voice in the hollow, the streams, like some of them we like accomplished a bunch of stuff and other ones we did not. So
Because it's like basically it's like
it's like
the
real
title.
production.
It's a production diary. You're just like, what? Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, so thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, you could see you could get some pretty cool scans with a camera. And I've seen some people do some amazing scans with just their iPhone. So don't feel like you have to have this really like expensive setup. David Quack used to do those really awesome ones of trees and stuff at the park with his iPhone. So look into this program. It's kick ass. Yeah. See you guys next week. And thanks again.
Thanks for coming.